Thank you very much. I seek refuge from Satan. I seek refuge from Satan in the name of God the Merciful. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds, and may peace be upon our Prophet, the last of the Prophets, Abil Qasim Muhammad, son of Abdullah, and may peace be upon his family, and may peace be upon his friends, and may peace be upon all of the prophets and those who were sent by God. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum, may peace be upon you all. At the beginning, I would like to welcome you, and I would like to thank you for this turnout, despite some of the possible dangers in the holy month of Ramadan. We, together with many others, we cancelled some of the iftars, the popular iftars, in order to ease the burden and for the sake of the safety of the people. However, the developments in Gaza and the events in Gaza and the uniqueness of International Al-Quds Day, on this day specifically, this imposed on us and required from us to meet here today. And in this place which we have gotten used to, the place where we have gotten used to the funeral processions for our martyrs and to welcome our prisoners and to celebrate the victories of our resistance, and the place where we usually express our stances. At the beginning also, and before speaking about the occasion, I must express my deep feelings of sorrow for the Lebanese families who lost yesterday, who lost their beloved, who lost their loved ones from different families and from different areas in Lebanon in the very unfortunate incident of the Algerian plane which crashed. At the beginning as well, we must also salute the souls of the martyrs of Gaza in these days, and the wounded of Gaza, and also the mujahideen and the heroes of Gaza and the people of Gaza who are standing with steadfastness on this day, which just so happens to be the anniversary of the July 2006 war. We must also on this day salute the souls of our martyrs, the families of our martyrs and the wounded, the resistance fighters, our people of steadfastness, our people who brought about the miracle in July 2006, and all of the families of the martyrs who continued to walk on the path and who are fighting in more than one area for the sake of the resistance to remain, for the sake of the resistance axis to continue to exist, because the only hope is on this resistance. Brothers and sisters, International Al-Quds Day was declared by Imam Khomeini, may peace be upon him, and it was also highlighted by the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, may God keep him with us, as the last day, the last Friday of the month of Ramadan, so that this day could be a motive, a reminder to all of us of the central cause, so that Al-Quds and Palestine will remain present in our hearts and in our minds and in our thinking and in our culture. in our memories and in our priorities and in our speeches and in our efforts and on the battlefield. And when the Imam focused and specified the last Friday of every holy month of Ramadan and the sanctity of this day, it's in order to reflect on the sanctity of this cause and the humanitarian perspective of this cause, the holiness of this cause, the Islamic nature of this cause. And day after day, it becomes clear the importance of this declaration and the dire need to celebrate this day by the Ummah. When we look at the situation of the Ummah today, we sense the importance of this declaration and of this occasion and of this commemoration and this responsibility and this culture. After the Israeli Zionist occupation of Palestine and after the Zionists seized control of all of occupied Palestine, historical Palestine, from the river to the sea, in addition to Israeli expansion in other Arab territories, the main concern of the Zionists ever since that time was to, and their main goal, which they worked for years, for many long years, and they are still working on, was to destroy the Palestinian cause, cancelling the Palestinian cause, considering that the people of Palestine, as if they don't exist, as if the Palestinian territories are no longer Palestinian, they're Israeli, as if Al-Quds doesn't concern the Muslims or Christians. It has become an eternal capital for the Jewish state. The goal after the occupation was to destroy, to eliminate the Palestinian cause, to end the Palestinian cause. It never occurred to the Zionists and the masters of the Zionists, it never occurred to them that 1 inch of Palestinian territory will be returned to its rightful owners. Never did it occur to them that one Palestinian refugee would come back to his home. So for this reason, we find that the Israeli Zionist consensus regarding Al-Quds and regarding preventing the refugees from returning is a decisive, complete conviction. Palestine, at the very least, if we look at the Zionist project, that is Palestine from the perspective of the Zionist project. And they knew that such a cause of such magnitude and that such a holy land like Palestine and such beloved people like the Palestinian people cannot be eliminated or cancelled in 1 or 2 years or in 1 or 2 generations. So therefore, they put together a long-term plan in order to achieve this goal and in order to make this goal, to carry out this plan. Any one of us today who analyzes what took place after 1948 and 1967 up until today, anyone can discover the steps which were taken within this long-term plan in order to eliminate the Palestinian cause. And this was always the dream of the Americans and the West and the Zionists. For example, and this is all a prelude in order to speak about Gaza, before speaking about Gaza. For example, the Zionists and their masters assume that Arab territories are extensive, are wide territories, and that 100,000 or 200,000 or 1 million Palestinians at the beginning, 1 million refugees could be absorbed very easily and naturalized and given citizenship, meaning they could be blended into these Arab societies from Lebanon to Syria to Jordan to Egypt to Iraq to the Gulf countries. And this danger existed and it still does exist, and it is still hunting down the Palestinian refugees. Another example is the efforts which were exerted to invent causes or issues for every country, for every people, for every country in our Arab and Islamic world, in order to take away the centrality of the Palestinian cause and the centrality of Al-Quds, and to impose priorities and other issues. And they achieved a lot of success in this regard. We cannot assume that our enemy is always failing. No, it fails if we want to make it fail. But if we leave the enemy, and if we stood aside, or if some of us help this enemy, like what happened in the Arab and Islamic world, then the enemy can make achievements. So therefore, yes, the enemy was able to invent central causes for our peoples and our countries other than the Palestinian cause. Today, and at the time where Gaza is witnessing a bloodbath, in the Arab countries we have other priorities like gas or oil for our cars, petrol for our cars, or needs, or salaries. This does exist. These are legitimate demands, but they wanted these issues to be the central issues so that Palestine would be forgotten. Another example, inventing enemies. This was always happening. Today, or one day, it's the Soviet Union. The other day, it's someone else. And then after the victory which was achieved, they tried other attempts, financially, psychologically, different aspects. The determination of the Palestinian people, the most dangerous stage they reached over the past few years or in the last decade was trying to isolate the Palestinian people, isolate them psychologically, trying to isolate them also on the political level and also on the battlefield, via trying to push the Palestinians into conflicts or confrontations or certain animosities against the people of the surrounding countries, or trying to impose these conflicts on the Palestinians. Of course, I'm not here in the process of holding anyone responsible for this. However, we always need to revise and reevaluate, especially in this regard, until it reaches a stage whereby people in the region and in the Arab and Islamic world reach the level whereby they are not concerned with anything which is Palestine or related to Palestine. And this is what we are witnessing today in some of the Arab media outlets, unfortunately. And I will go back to this when I speak of Gaza. And even here in Lebanon, there are a lot of efforts being exerted in this regard. You remember in previous occasions when I told you, when they choose a Palestinian to be a suicide bomber, this is deliberate, to create hatred and animosities and to create distance between us and the Palestinians. Just a few weeks ago, when we saw the issue of the Rasul al-Azam hospital, in the media they said there was a tunnel from the Burj al-Baraj refugee camp to the Rasul al-Azam hospital. These are not silly details. This is part. There is a black room which has been working for decades and for years in order for there not to be any connection between a Palestinian and the Lebanese and a Jordanian and an Iraqi, or between Jordanians, Iraqis and Lebanese on the one hand and the Palestinians, meaning you the Palestinians, and also sieges and massacres being committed against the Palestinians in Palestine and outside Palestine in order to make the Palestinians reach the state of despair and not having any more alternatives, and therefore surrendering to the reality and accepting in the end what is imposed. But despite, of course, these are examples. As I said, we can put together a list and recall what happened for decades, and we can say here they worked in this way and that way, here they achieved success, here they didn't, here they made an achievement. on the level of this goal, which is to take away the centrality of the Palestinian cause and to work on eliminating this cause and of cancelling out this cause and isolating the Palestinian people. However, despite all what happened, despite all of the conspiracies and all the challenges, this Palestinian cause continued to impose itself on the region and on the world. And what is taking place in Gaza today bears witness to this conclusion. The war which imposes itself on the region and on the world after all of these conspiracies and all of these challenges. This cause continues to impose itself for many different reasons. However, the most important is the Palestinian people. This is the most important reason. One of the reasons, for example, is the steadfastness of some of the Arab countries, and especially Syria, and Syria not bowing down to the settlement and the conditions for a settlement after the Madrid conference, and after Syria adopted the resistance and supported the resistance, and also the victory of the blessed Islamic revolution in Iran under the leadership of Imam Khomeini, may peace be upon his soul. This revolution which adopted Palestine and Al-Quds and the Palestinian people and the Palestinian resistance. Also, we have the resistance movements in Lebanon and the victories achieved in Lebanon and its overthrowing of many of the plots of America and Israel in Lebanon and in the region. However, the most important remains the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people, because the Palestinian people did not, despite all of the pains, despite all of the sufferings and the wounds and all the massacres, and despite all of the factors of despair and frustration, despite the fact that the horizon was closed, the people did not show despair, they did not surrender, and the Palestinian people did not forget this key which they usually hand over from the grandfather to the father to the son, the keys of the houses and the homes. This is part of a counter-psychological plan, irrespective if someone has put together this plan or not, but this is natural, it's a natural thing. The Palestinian people inside Palestine and outside Palestine and in the refugee camps, despite the very harsh living conditions and also despite the incentives for leaving and the open doors to Canada and Australia and Europe in order to fragment and divide this Palestinian human body, despite all of this, the Palestinians held on to their territory and to their cause and to their sanctities and to their homes and to their farms and fields, and they rejected to surrender, they rejected to bow down. And the Palestinian people are still doing this until today. Their choice was steadfastness and holding on to their rights and fighting for the sake of retaining their rights and also putting up with the repercussions of this path. From the beginning, not today, from 1948 to 1967, the movements and the Palestinian factions, all different Palestinian resistance factions and movements of all different ideologies, all different orientations, all different political backgrounds, and the Palestinian people, they all took this cause and fought for this cause. And when we speak about a specific program or a long-term plan, America worked on such a plan, the West, Israelis, they worked on this plan, and they were helped by many of the Arab regimes. This is something which we must mention for decades, not just today. They were helped by many of the Arab regimes. These Arab regimes whose thrones were for the sake of protecting Israel and defending Israel. Their thrones were for this sake. And this program still continues up until today. And what is being witnessed in many of our countries and amongst many of our people, and the situation we witnessed shows that this plan does exist. What we are witnessing today as a region and as an ummah is the most dangerous stage ever since Palestine was seized. This is the most dangerous stage ever since Palestine was seized. Palestine was seized. This is the most dangerous stage ever since Palestine was seized. And the reason is this systematic destruction. What we witnessed in our region, in the beginning we had popular revolutions, honest revolutions, yes, which had demands and causes. However, there is someone who took advantage of this and turned it in the direction he wants. What we're witnessing today in our region of the countries and of the armies and the peoples and the societies as well. We were speaking about the destruction of countries, we were speaking about the destruction of armies, but now what we are witnessing is the destruction of peoples and societies, dividing these societies psychologically, socially, and creating animosities which cannot be addressed for 10 years or for hundreds of years. This is nothing easy at all. What we are witnessing in more than one Arab country today, and the dangers which threaten the remaining Arab countries, Syria, for example, was the strong wall, and it will remain as such, God willing, the strong wall in confronting the Zionist plan or the Zionist project. Syria, which was a strong wall and will remain against the Zionist project, and it was the main sponsor of the resistance and the Palestinian cause. We all know the size of the war which is imposed on Syria. Iraq, which entered a dark tunnel, and unfortunately, in the name of Islam and in the name of the Islamic Khilafah, we see tens of thousands of Christian families being displaced from Iraq. And the churches of the Christians are being threatened. And I'd like to add to this that the Sunnis who disagree with the ISIL have no alternatives. Either they swear allegiance to ISIL or they're slaughtered. The Shia, whether they disagree or agree with ISIL, they have no alternative but to be slaughtered, because they are judged as infidels. The religious and ethnic minorities, what they are confronting in Mosul and also the other areas where ISIL has deployed in Iraq and in Syria. We as Muslims today, and also as an Islamic movement, we must stand here on Al-Quds Day to declare our condemnation to what the Christians and the Muslims also are being subject to in Iraq, not just the Christians. Our condemnations to what the holy shrines are being subject to, the Prophet Yunus, Daniel. In Iraqi description, this is not Shia, it's Sunni. These are Sunni shrines. And I'd like to express my own fears in this regard. This scenario which we're witnessing, this destruction of mosques and churches and the places of worship, the sanctities, which reaches in the end the sanctities of, or the shrines of the prophets, I am afraid of what might come. I'm afraid that it will approach the stage whereby Al-Aqsa will be destroyed. If the so-called Islamic Khilafah can destroy mosques and churches and the shrines of the prophets, why don't the Jews have the right then to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque? I fear that this could become something familiar and common. I'm not judging here, but yes, it might become something normal and common. They destroyed mosques and churches, shrines, they dug the graves, okay. Today, our ummah is in its worst shape, but the first victim is Palestine. The first target is and will remain the Palestinian cause, and therefore we must all realize and we must know where we should go, in which direction we should go at this time, the time of sedition, the time of conspiracies, the time or the era of mixing between righteousness and wrong. We must look very carefully in which direction shall we go, what should we say, what should we do, where shall we fight, where should we surrender, where should we wage war. This is the big challenge which our ummah and the peoples of our ummah, especially we the people of the region, the big challenge we are confronting, especially the peoples around Palestine. In this perspective, we look at the Israeli terrorist war on the Gaza Strip, which began days ago. And in this perspective, the war on Lebanon took place in July 2006 and on Gaza in 2008. What was the goal of these wars? It was always to humiliate, to break, to impose surrender, to disarm, to take any element of strength which we have, making us reach despair, trying to convince us that there is no choice but to surrender to the Israelis. But in 2006 and in 2008, the results were different. Today also, we in Lebanon, and at this time where we are remembering the July 2006 war, we can understand and we can feel and realize completely what is taking place in Gaza, what our people in Gaza are being subject to in July 2014, because the same thing, exactly what took place here with us, what we were subject to in 2006, exactly the same thing. The same excuse, remember with me, the excuse of kidnapping the 3 Israeli settlers. In Lebanon, we had the 2 prisoners. This was an excuse. Is it the real reason? Israel, which wants to take every opportunity, Israel, which believed that the Gaza besieged strip, which has been besieged for years, and the regional situation, the psychological situation, it believed that it was the golden, historical golden opportunity to break Gaza and to end Gaza. It was the same in 2006, whereby they were bringing with them the new Middle East. Remember what Mrs. Condoleezza Rice or Miss Condoleezza Rice said at that time. Today I don't want to insult anyone. The Israelis took advantage of the kidnapping of the 3 Israeli settlers, and it's not known who kidnapped them and who killed them. It's not known yet. At the very least, in 2006, it was known who took the 2 Israeli soldiers. But in Gaza, the injustice is even more. In Gaza, there was a kidnapping, and the Palestinians were framed with it, or the resistance in Palestine was framed with this kidnapping, and an excuse was made in order for this war to be waged at this time. Now, from the excuse of the kidnapping of the settlers, then the air war, and thousands of air raids, then we had the shelling. Remember that we were all here together in July 2006. The Navy ships bombing, the massacres being carried out, the killings of women, children and civilians, destroying the houses and the schools and the mosques. And in Lebanon, we'd like to add also the churches, the displacement of people from their homes, and then the land operation which began just a few days ago. Then some of the international community being silent, and some of the international community cooperating. Today, America is covering this war from the opening moments and supporting it financially and with weapons and with a political stance. The same goes for the West, the Security Council, the UN as well. And some Arab regimes are also cooperating, and some are silent towards what is taking place, and some are holding the resistance responsible for the blood and the martyrs and for what Gaza is being subject to, and saying therefore that the enemy is innocent of these massacres and these crimes. However, on the other hand, this great popular steadfastness, this cohesion, and the support of the people of Gaza for the resistance and the putting up with these sufferings and this wounding and the displacement, this unique performance of the Palestinian resistance factions and this political steadfastness in confronting all of the international and regional pressures. However, in the end, I say to our people in Gaza, to our Palestinian people, to you, to all those who are listening, in the end, who will decide the result? Who will decide what will happen? A three-way equation, like the three-way golden equation, the equation of the battlefield, the popular steadfastness, and the political steadfastness. Again, the battlefield, the popular steadfastness, and the political steadfastness. This is what will decide the fate of what happens. In July 2006, let's learn the lessons. In July 2006, the Israelis, from day one, began to set high goals. Then it began to go down, lower and lower. And the last week of the war, he who was begging for an end of the war were the Israelis. How they used to call them in the last 2 weeks, how Ehud Olmert used to call them and used to say, if we continue the war, Israel will cease to exist. I say, we, resistance in Lebanon, we couldn't understand this. How? How can this be? If the war continues, Israel will cease to exist. At the same time, some of the Arab regimes used to tell Israel, continue, crush them. This is all being repeated today. Continue, crush them, or at the very least impose on them humiliating conditions. Don't stop. However, the Israelis themselves, they reached a point whereby they weren't able to continue the war. They sought the assistance of the Americans, and when the Americans had the serious will, the whole region would go along, and therefore the region went along. Isn't this what happened in July 2006? This is what changed the equation. The battlefield of the resistance fighters, the heroic resistance fighters, the popular steadfastness and perseverance of the men, women, children and civilians in all the territories, especially the territories which were targeted with bombings and killings, and the political steadfastness. I'd like to say as well, with regards to this current war, the hope for the Palestinians, look, if it's left for the Americans and for the West and many of the Arabs, they would say this is a chance, put an end to it. If anyone believes that, for example, get rid of Hamas, they don't want to get rid of Hamas, no. Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and all of the Palestinian resistance factions who are targeted in Gaza, the resistance and the arms of the resistance and the will of the resistance and the culture of the resistance and the hope of the resistance. Now today, some days, for example, the main theme of the resistance is this, then its theme becomes that, just like what happened in Lebanon, what happened in Palestine. The names are different, but the goal isn't only Hamas. The goal is to eliminate all the resistance in Palestine, all the tunnels, every missile, every Kalashnikov, every fist which holds a weapon, or every blood which flows in the veins of the resistance fighters in Gaza. This is the target today. Now, the horizon is that the Israelis come and reach the point whereby they can find that they cannot continue. This is what happened in July 2006. They cannot continue, so you Americans come and find a solution. This is what happened in 2006. Now, of course, the solution in the Security Council was to condemn the resistance, but what was most important is what came after. Now, I say today that Gaza today, at the time where it is holding these funeral processions for its martyrs, it has achieved victory in the resistance rhetoric or in the resistance manner. When we reach when we reach day 18 and the Zionists, together with all the world who is with them, when they're incapable of achieving any goal of the war on Gaza, this means that the resistance had achieved victory in Gaza. And I'd like to say as well, according to my own knowledge and my partnership, I'd like to tell you that the resistance in Gaza can achieve victory, and it will achieve victory, God willing. We today, if we take a look and evaluate, and then we'll make a stance. Today, bearing in mind that the confrontation is taking place between two sides on a battlefield. The Israeli side, which is one of the strongest armies of the world. However, most important is that this army, after the July 2006 war in Lebanon and the war in 2008 in Gaza, we had the Vinograd Commission, for example, in Israel. Committees were put together, they tried to learn lessons, and they held discussions. And from 2006 until today, the Israelis are continuing to hold military drills and arming and preparing themselves and gathering information. So what they did over these past 8 years is to put together a stronger army. Now, on the other hand, we have a Gaza Strip, which is a very small geographical area. It is not a mountainous area, and what is more dangerous is that it is besieged. It has been besieged for years. The most harshest kind of besiegement. Now, if we take into consideration these two sides, what do we see in front of us? We see in front of us Israeli failure. Israeli failure. And we also see in front of us the achievements of the resistance. On the Israeli side, number one, Israeli confusion when it comes to the goal of this war. Up until now, can anyone understand what the declared goal is? Yes, they have hidden goals, which I said before. But what is the declared aim? Is it the same as the hidden aim? No. They haven't begun at a high level, a high aim. Why? Please pay attention, because they're afraid. From the beginning, they were afraid of failure. So they're taking advantage of the lessons of the war in Lebanon. In Lebanon, they began. The goal was to eliminate the resistance, making it turn its weapons over, forcing it to leave from the south of the Litani River, turning over the 2 captured soldiers unconditionally. You notice that the Israeli soldier, the Israelis aren't speaking about him. They're not mentioning him. So they didn't begin with a high goal. Why? They took lessons. They should have taken lessons. They should have rebuilt their army. This is not just about Gaza. It's about Lebanon, the whole region. So they don't have the courage to declare these high goals. Even when they speak about the land operation, they refer to destroying tunnels on the border areas. So they are referring to very moderate goals, quite small goals, in order, if they achieve them, to say they achieved the goals of the war. Number two, we have intelligence failure when it comes to the capabilities of the resistance and the locations of its weapons, the locations of the manufacturing of these weapons, and the places from where these weapons are launched. Gaza should be under complete Israeli covering, or Israel should have complete information from the air, from the land, but this was also a failure. Number three, the Air Force failed in deciding the battle. It's very important for Gaza and also Lebanon. If you look at the Israeli media, at the time where the Israelis are fighting against Gaza, they speak about the second Lebanese war and the third Lebanese war. They're fighting in Gaza now. But the war in Gaza, however, they are looking to your eyes how you view the war in Gaza. And what are the lessons you take from the war on Gaza? Because we know what is happening behind the scenes, the failure of the Air Force in deciding the battle. Although just a few months ago, the commander of the Israeli Air Force, and it seems he was new and didn't understand anything, he said that the readiness of the Israeli Air Force today, after all of the amendments made, he said, and listen very well, he said the Israeli Air Force is capable, because I doubt the Lebanese were monitoring and following all this over the past few months. The Lebanese were all preoccupied in other issues. He said that the Israeli Air Force is capable of deciding the war in Lebanon if it took place in 24 hours. And it's capable of deciding the war in Gaza if it took place in 12 hours. Today, how long did it take? 18. Today it's day number 18 now for the Israeli Air Force. Who is he talking about? He was talking about Gaza, the besieged Gaza Strip. A failure, the failure of the Israelis in touching or in harming the command structure, command and control structure in the Gaza Strip. And with all due respect to the parties, they invent commanders. Sometimes they speak about assassinating commanders, and these commanders are still alive. This is the point the Israelis have reached. They even failed to prevent the launching of the missiles and stopping the missiles, although they have radars, they have drones, they have warplanes, they have intelligence services. And we all know what it means for the missiles to continue to be launched in such a battlefield. Also, a failure in the land operation. It's enough for me to tell you what was said by some of the Israeli commentators. This is what was said by one of the Israeli commentators. He said, I quote, "Our army failed." That's not me, the Lebanese person who loves the resistance, the ally of resistance. This is the enemy. One of the important Israeli commentators said, our army failed, and Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, persevered and showed steadfastness, and they killed the backbone of the Israeli infantry forces. He means the Golani division. Yes, a failure in the land operation. The size of the losses amongst the commanders, the soldiers, the tanks, clear fear of entering into a expansive land operation. This is what we see in the eyes of Ya'alon, in the face of Ya'alon and Netanyahu. They have besieged, they are the stronger power, but they are afraid. They are intimidated by taking such a step of the land operation. Therefore, the Israelis from the beginning resorted, this is because they don't have confidence in their army and in themselves, they resorted to killing civilians and children, targeting the supporters of the resistance, breaking the will of the people, just like what they dreamt of in Lebanon in July 2006. They were dreaming of witnessing protests in Beqa or Dahiya or in the south for the displaced, especially the displaced from their homes, who called for the resistance to go ahead with a ceasefire or to surrender. And so, because of you, the most honorable people, the most dignified people, this didn't happen in July 2006. And now they are going ahead with the same thing in the Gaza Strip in order to impose on the resistance leadership, the political and military leadership, to impose on them an acceptance at any price for a ceasefire or to surrender. This means that the Israeli army, when it went to war in Gaza, it didn't go to war as an army which was fighting. It went as an army which kills children. And this is the army we knew in Lebanon. The same goes for it since decades. The same description can be made. And in a final conclusion regarding the Israeli evaluation, if you recall Ehud Barak, the former Israeli Minister of Defense or Minister of War, I think in the first government after Olmert left power, and the other person whose name I forgot, what's his name I forgot, the Minister of Defense, Meretz, I don't remember. Ehud Barak, just after years, what did he say? Just after years had passed, and this was repeated as well by the heads of Joint Chief of Staff of the Israeli army. A small sentence, they said. Today, this sentence has been eliminated on the gateways of Gaza. This sentence has been defeated. He was threatening Lebanon back then. Barak said that in any future war which will be waged by Israel, it will be a very quick war, it will be a decisive war, and its victory will be clear. This is what Barak said. It will be quick, decisive, and its victory will be clear. As you will not fight behind walls, you, the cowardly people who hide behind the warplanes and the tanks and kill children, if you confront our heroes and our fighters face to face, you will be defeated and your army will be defeated. It is not a quick victory, nor is it a decisive victory, nor is it a clear victory as well. On the other hand, the resistance and its people, number one, from day one, there was a clear goal. Our goal is to lift the siege and to preserve the resistance, of course. To lift the siege. Number two, steadfastness on the battlefield. Number three, making achievements on the battlefield. Number four, taking the initiative on the battlefield and fighting behind the lines of the enemy. Number five, continuing with the launching of missiles, with the presence of this Air Force and these Israeli warplanes. Number six, targeting unprecedented places with these missiles, targeting places which never were targeted before. Of course, there is a difference between now and July 2006, but there are commonalities as well. In July 2006, the furthest point we reached was Al-Quds. But our colleagues in Gaza, where did they begin from day one? They began with targeting Tel Aviv. This is the first time whereby we witnessed rockets being launched or missiles from inside Palestine to target all territories in Palestine. This is a great achievement. Why did I say we know and we understand and we feel with them? Some say they launched 100 missiles. This is a sentence written. What does it mean, 100 missiles? It means carrying them, preparing them, protecting them, all of this. And this requires great efforts. Continuing with the targeting of places which have never been targeted with missiles, having confidence and trust in God and the resistance, popular steadfastness and popular support. We haven't seen one protest, one strike, any popular pressure against the resistance in Gaza. On the contrary, the people of Gaza say, we are with you. Let us all be killed so long as the siege is lifted. Political steadfastness, rejecting all of the pressures being exerted, international pressures and regional pressures. What does it mean when the leadership of the stands and rejects from day one a ceasefire at the time where it is the one sacrificing martyrs, men, women, children, citizens, and the Israelis quickly go and accept a ceasefire? This has great political, moral significance and military significance. And also we're witnessing what is taking place in the West Bank. So, therefore, what we shall witness via the popular steadfastness and the political steadfastness and the imposing of new equations on the enemy, and this requires some time. It's not easy, brothers and sisters, for Netanyahu and the Israelis to hand over victory to the Palestinians, to give the resistance in Palestine this achievement. I am confident that some of the Arab leaders now are contacting Netanyahu and telling him, continue. are saying to him, continue, don't give them an achievement, don't give them a victory. But in the end, Israel does not work for some of the Arab leaders. Israel looks for its own interests, its own security, economic and political interests. And the resistance is the one which will impose on the Israelis the solution, just like what happened in July 2006. And the Israelis will cry out and will call on the Americans to find an exit for them from this dilemma. This is the horizon. Our responsibility remains, and this is the last part. Our responsibility remains towards this great event is, first of all, we call on putting all disagreements, all sensitivities, all disagreements. This is why I said I don't want to insult anyone. We call for putting all disagreements, all sensitivities, all differences in views regarding other issues. Let's set all of these aside. We might remain disagreed on the political stance or the non-political stance towards any other issue. We might disagree in our stance, we might disagree in our evaluation. However, we must set this aside in order to look at Gaza as an issue of the people, resistance, and a rightful cause, a just cause, a completely just cause, undoubtful. That we cannot say anything but that. Some people might say, okay, we'll go back to other issues. No, in Gaza, there is no room for disagreements, no room for doubt. No mind, no religion, no values can say that there is any room for doubt regarding this current battle which is taking place in Gaza. Let's take it from this angle as a rightful cause, a cause of the people and of resistance, even if we still disagree on other issues. Gaza today, with its blood, with its remains, with the injustice it's being subject to, with its steadfastness, with its heroics, it should be above anything else, above any sensitivities, above any other calculations. Unfortunately, we hear some stances in some Arab media outlets, stances which accuse the resistance from day one and hold it responsible for the blood, and then hold it responsible for the continuation of the battle and incite against the resistance. Some even have reached the point whereby express their sympathy. On some Arab media outlets, they express their sympathy with the Israelis and with the Israeli army and call for dealing the knockout blow to Hamas. This is something which is shameful, something which is really unfortunate, whatever be the sensitivities. It's shameful to find an Arab on an Arab satellite media channel who expresses his sympathy with the Israeli soldiers who are killing children in Gaza because of a political rivalry. At the very least, my dear brother, who doesn't want to speak, who doesn't want to express sympathy, let him be silent. He who doesn't want to support, let him be silent. Let him not speak in such a shameful way for himself and for the Ummah. Number two, the Arab and Islamic governments should adopt the goal of lifting the siege on Gaza, which the Palestinian resistance is speaking of, protecting this goal, defending this goal, protecting the political leadership of the resistance from the pressures it is being subject to, pressures in order to go ahead with the ceasefire without achieving this goal of lifting the siege. Because the siege, my brothers and sisters, means death on a daily basis for the people of Gaza. It's death on a daily basis, not for 18 days, but for years, without any horizon, without any future. And also, I must repeat, there must be political, media, financial, material support, and in our opinion, support with arms, according to the capabilities of every side, far away from any sensitivity or rivalry. We must remind everyone here, because we hear some talk these days, we must remind everyone that Iran and Syria, together with the resistance in Lebanon, and especially Hezbollah, in accordance with its own capabilities, for many long years, They never spared any efforts in supporting the Palestinian resistance, all the factions of resistance, politically and on the media, and also morally, financially, from a material angle, weapons, logistical support, and all different areas of expertise. Today, there are some people who are not doing anything for Gaza and for Palestine except being preoccupied with accusations. Who stands behind the Palestinians in Gaza and who doesn't stand behind them? I don't want to go into this argument with anyone, but it's enough for any just person or fair person also. Any fair person, let him put together a list of the resistance nations and movements, and put another list of anyone, countries and organizations, and let's display for decades what did the resistance sacrifice for Palestine and Al-Quds, for the people, the blood, the sacrifices, the wars which we entered in, the conflicts for the sake of Palestine, their capabilities, their support, despite all of the burdens, the dangers, and the repercussions in the world, repercussions throughout the world, a siege, sanctions, wars. This is all because of Palestine. First and foremost, it's because of Palestine. And on the other hand, let's take a look at what the others did for Palestine. Where did they fight for the sake of Al-Aqsa Mosque? What did they give? What did they sacrifice for the Palestinian people? What did they give for all of the other wars? What did they sacrifice for the sake of all other arenas which serve Israel and serve the goal of eliminating the Palestinian cause, which I spoke of before? I don't want to say any more in this regard. In confronting this event, we in Hezbollah, we were and we shall remain, we shall continue to stand in support of the Palestinian people, all the Palestinian people, and we shall continue to stand in support of the resistance in Palestine, all the factions and movements of resistance in Palestine, without any exception. We in Hezbollah, we shall spare no efforts in any way whatsoever when it comes to support and providing all kinds of assistance which we can. We in Hezbollah, we sense that we are real partners with this resistance, partners in jihad and in brotherhood, partners in hopes and in pains and in sacrifices and in fate as well, because their victory is a victory for us all, and their defeat will be a defeat for us all. We in Hezbollah, we are following very closely, in detail, all the developments which are taking place in this current battle in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine. We are following this, and we are monitoring all of the developments on the battlefield and also the political developments. And therefore, from here, we tell our brothers in Gaza, we are with you. We stand side by side with you, and we are confident regarding your steadfastness and your victory, and we shall do what we believe is necessary on all different aspects, at all different levels. And I say to the Zionists, you in Gaza, you are in Gaza today, you are working within the circle of failure, so don't go beyond Gaza to the circle of suicide and defeat. And we will witness once again a new achievement for resistance and the people of resistance and the movements of the resistance. And here I bid you farewell. May God make you achieve victory. May God preserve you. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
And that was Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of the resistance movement of Hezbollah, speaking there live in Dahiyeh in the south of Lebanon on this day, the International Al-Quds Day.